guys, alright, this is it. This is tomato planting day, and today I'm going to teach you as a new beginner gardener how to plant tomatoes. So the very first piece of advice that I want to give you is to harden off your plants first. Whether you started them yourself in a greenhouse or under grow lights or in your bedroom window, or if you bought your plants from a store, I encourage you to harden off your plants. And what that means is to gradually expose them to the sunlight, first like a very overcast day, and then maybe 1 or 2, 3 hours of sunlight every day for about 7 days. I did make a video about hardening off tomatoes if you want to watch that. So that's the very first piece of advice, is to harden off your plants, because the worst thing that can happen is that you plant them out in the garden and they're not ready and they get scorched by the sun and they die. So that's the first piece of advice. The second piece of advice is to check your weather forecast. Even though you may have passed your last frost date for the season, which I have, you still may have some cooler temperatures at night. And you want to make sure that your temperatures are at least 50 degrees Fahrenheit or above at night, and at least higher than that, during the day, for your tomatoes to thrive and to grow. The second thing you want to check on your weather forecast is rain or storms. So today it's very overcast day, which is, I think, a good day to plant tomatoes. These tomatoes that I'm planting right now are the Cherokee purple tomatoes, and these have been hardened off very well. They're good and sturdy plants, and they've been out exposed to the wind for quite some time, maybe like 4 weeks. And so I'm not really worried about the wind damage and things like that. It is supposed to rain here tomorrow, which I think is a great thing, because rain has lots of soluble nitrogen in it, and it's going to be good and healthy for the plants. It'll be their first rainwater. They'll be happy. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, get my gloves on. Now this raised bed, and the soil that's in it is brand new this year. It's a mixture of topsoil and compost, and I've already added worm castings, but it's brand new. The soil life is just not really built up yet. So this year in this bed, or these beds I'm doing this year for the tomatoes, I am going to add an organic fertilizer. This particular fertilizer I got from my local Walmart, and it says for individual plants, place 1 tablespoon for every square foot of plant canopy, and apply every 3 to 4 weeks and water thoroughly. So for my other bed that I had last year, as my first ever garden bed, I did not add fertilizer until about halfway through the season, because I noticed that my tomatoes were not really growing, and my peppers as well. They were blooming and producing fruit, but they weren't growing, like they weren't getting very big. And so I wondered if, because it was a new bed last year, it just didn't have the organic matter broken down and the compost broken down enough to where it was available to the plants, and they were not able to access any nutrients to grow larger plants. So this year I am going to add this while I'm planting, and I'm also going to add just a handful of worm castings. And I was not able to find worm castings at my local box stores or anything, so I had to order that off Amazon, which was fine. So the first thing I'm going to do is pick out a plant. These are my Cherokee purple tomatoes, and I'm really super excited to plant these. Let's see, I think we'll just go with the first one here. And as you can see, it has these bottom leaves at the bottom. These are the cotyledons, is the scientific name, but these are just the first little leaves that came out when it sprouted. And it gave the plant enough energy and nutrition to keep growing, but other than that, they're not useful anymore. These that actually look like tomato leaves, these are their first true leaves, and they've done their job already. And so we're actually going to pluck these off and plant this tomato about this deep in the soil. And that's because all along the stem here, when it's in contact with soil, it will grow new roots. There's already roots down here, but it will grow new roots off the stem, which will help you have a better more healthy, stable plant. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna dig. I've already got my spot here. I made a plan for my garden this year, a layout, and I'm gonna do 2 tomato plants here and 2 tomato plants on the other side of the bed, and I have 2 beds behind me, so all 3 beds will have just 2 tomato plants on each end. This year I am focusing on growing varieties that I really am interested in, that I want to try and eat, and then some varieties that I'm interested in having like more production for canning and stuff like that. But let's get planting. So I'm going to plant this hole. I'm about 12 to 18 inches from the edge here, and I'm only about 5 inches from the edge here, and I think that is sufficient. I've already got some dill growing here, which was part of my plan, and I don't want to get too far into that. Okay, so I've dug the hole about 6 inches deep, and that might be deep enough, I'm not quite sure. So what I'm going to do is get my 1 tablespoon, I'm going to put that in there. Got me about a small handful of worm castings, and I'm just going to break up the soil in there with my fingers to get that fertilizer incorporated into the soil. Alright, now here's the exciting part. I'm so excited. I'm actually going to take my gloves off because I want to be able to feel this plant, and I'm going to use my fingernails to snip off these bottom leaves, like I said. If you want to use pruners, by all means, it will help to make sure that the plant isn't damaged. Because if you accidentally grab one of these and you think it's broken off and you pull on it, you'll pull the skin, what I call the skin, off the stem of the tomato. And I'm not going to say that it will be fatal, but it will be able to introduce fungal and bacterial infections and stuff like that into the plant itself. So whatever you want to do. So you just put your fingers on your pot like that. You want to squeeze it a little bit to loosen it up, and it pop right out. Look at these roots, guys. These plants have been in here too long, I will tell you. I made a video about that I planted things too early, too soon. So these are a little bit root bound. What I'm going to do is just gently tease these roots out. Tomatoes are very forgiving. Most plants are forgiving. The way I think about it is, you know, these things want to grow. They want to produce their seed. They want to, you know, live on in life. And so they will most likely grow for you. But I'm just going to make sure we get these roots somewhat loosened up here so that they will be able to and know to start leaching out to the soil for their nutrients. Alright, let's see if this hole is deep enough. No, it's not. So, we're going to go a little bit deeper. Yep, I think it is. So we're just going to backfill with this dirt. Try to make sure you get it tucked in there, get all the air pockets out. You're going to tamp it down as you're backfilling it. This is a great feeling, getting your hands in the soil, in the dirt. It's finally planting time. And we're going to just fill that in a little bit. Now my extra dirt, my extra soil, I'm just going to push to the side. We'll put that somewhere else. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is probably the most important thing, is I'm going to cover it back up with the mulch. The mulch is going to do multiple things. The most important thing is that it's going to prevent splashback. With tomatoes and anything that really grows close to the soil like this, when it rains, the soil splashes back up onto the leaves, and it transmits either bacterial or fungal diseases onto your plants. and that's how you get bacterial wilt or blight and things like that. So the mulch here will help to keep the soil covered so it doesn't splash back on your plants when it rains. And the second reason is just going to keep this soil moist under here, which is really a huge benefit for gardening. Alright guys, that is how to plant a tomato for the absolute beginner. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. We're giving the kids a lesson, a homeschool lesson here. This was going across our driveway.